The 2026 FanFests are some of the most important moments in FF14 history for a player. They mark the reveals and details releasing of some of the largest and most consequential changes the game has ever seen, and what I'd argue is a bit of a transitionary period in its life cycle, as it moves well and truly away from the shadow of its first major story arc and begins to get rolling on the second alongside all of the systems, battle and job changes that will accompany it. Each of the three, North America, and then Europe, and lastly Japan, hold swathes of new information that will impact the landscape of future years of FF14. At North America a couple of months ago, we got some huge bombshells. Evolved mode jobs, a complete rework of the weekly system and the removal of tombstones, a third difficulty to be added to 8-man raids, reworks to gearing and the introduction of an Evangelion-themed Alliance raid for Evercold, amongst others. So much promised, it seemed overwhelming even. But how did Europe hold up? Was it just as exciting in its own ways, or did it act as the unloved middle child between North America and Japan in terms of announcements, being a little thin on the ground in comparison? Today I'll be running through all the announcements, confirmations and information we got throughout the keynote and Q&A, and discussing the ramifications as well as my initial impressions based on those details we got. Before we jump in, if you want to support deep dives and discussions into FF14, please do consider subscribing. The keynote opened, as expected, with the extended trailer followed by a discussion on some of the lore reveals that took place as a direct result of it. The biggest world-building reveal, as far as I can tell, was the introduction of the realm ships, enormous civilization-sized vessels that appear to define life on the Fourth, considering that the surface seems to be completely hostile due to the whole being frozen thing. There are 5 realm ships, with each aligned to one of the elements, barring ice. Arc crystals are central to these floating civilizations, although their exact purpose remains a bit of a mystery. Whether these crystals serve as power sources, a means to stave off the ever-encroaching ice, or something else entirely, it's clear they're going to play a fairly big role in Evercold's narrative. We also got our first look at several of these locations. Nagalfa, the realm ship of water, showcases waterways and towering structures built across its massive deck, whilst Pringhorny, the realm ship of fire, appears to contrast that with volcanic furnaces and industrial architecture. Alongside them, Square Enix revealed Fargarth, one of the expansion's new hub cities, which will serve as a gathering place for people living among the realm ships. The naming conventions have already sparked a lot of discussion amongst players thanks to its strong Norse mythology influences, and I'm actually pretty excited to see the 3 remaining realm ships that have yet to be unveiled. We might be getting some of the most varied zones across an expansion we've ever seen, if we're really lucky. The first of the 2 upcoming Evercold jobs was fully revealed as well in Bastion, the expansion's brand new tank. Wielding the formidable Skiltborg as its primary arm, the job can switch its dual gun shields between melee attacks, where they act somewhat like claws, and ranged attacks, where they will shoot the cannons protruding from the back of the weapon. We didn't get much aside from the trailer, but there is a quote from Naoki Yoshida at the Q&A I'd like to add about its playstyle. He said, "I think one of the benefits of Bastion is that it can shoot, so it does have a good combination of close range attacks and then attacks which can be done from afar. I did mention this in the keynote presentation as well, but one of the key appeal points of Bastion is that in its toolkit, it does have good recovery and guard ability as well. So as a main tank, you can instantly apply those effects to a party member, but the key thing about Bastion is that you can also do it at a timing of your liking. So, you can look to what the boss is going to do, and based on the boss's timeline, decide when would be the most optimal time to apply those recovery or guarding abilities for your party members. The reveal also teased what lies ahead for the expansion's growing roster, confirming that Evercold's new physical range DPS job will be unveiled as expected during the Tokyo Fan Festival, but they gave some heavy hints, and thanks to those and Soken's blatant leaks, which was a good bit, we know with a decent degree of confidence that it is a job wielding a bird companion and my prediction is that it'll use some kind of arm-mounted projectile, like maybe a crossbow or something similar. I think Bastion was the most expected option for a tank given the shirt, but with that said, I do think it has a lot of potential. My main hold-up right now is just how it will differentiate itself further from Paladin in the main tank role. In 8.0, there will be a main tank off-tank split, and Paladin will share that main tank slot with Bastion and Bastion alone. Considering we've seen relatively little of just how evolved mode jobs actually function, the biggest question mark I have is one of unique playstyle in a moment-to-moment basis. Will each job have their own style of rotation and play that feels really distinct from one another, which is something I feel they fail at sometimes currently, or is it going to be more that each sub-role has a distinct playstyle, but that all the jobs within that sub-role feel similar aside from their small differing flavours? I hope that isn't the case. For example, Dark Knight, Warrior and Gunbreaker all feeling similar, but those three feeling very different to Bastion and Paladin, who are in a different design niche alongside one another. My preference is that every job just feels wildly different, even if we have to sacrifice a bit of balance to get there. The development team also revealed several major changes coming to FF14's main scenario structure and core gameplay systems. The expansion's main scenario quest will feature a significantly larger non-fixed story path with 3 distinct routes that players can undertake in any order. Rather than following a strictly linear sequence, adventurers will have greater freedom to decide where their journey takes them, tackling these zones in an order of their choice, before then funneling back into major plot points at key moments. The first question this raised for me upon hearing it was simple. How are instances and overworld battles going to be balanced and synced, considering players will be entering them at all different levels now, instead of before where they had a fairly strict balance? But they answered this concern there and then, immediately after. To address this, Evercold will introduce an automatic content balancing system. Instead of synchronizing or reducing players to a specific level, the system dynamically adjusts enemy health pools and damage output and other stats based on the levels of the party entering an encounter. This means players will retain the abilities and progression, presumably, that they've already earned, while still being able to tackle story content together, regardless of which route they've taken through the main scenario. Although all of the final details of the system have yet to be explained, the goal is to make cooperative play more seamless without forcing players to stop and catch up before continuing the adventure. My small note to this is that I desperately hope this is a testbed. Imagine dynamic content balancing being in everything, replacing level sync entirely. It's too early to cope too hard, but I hope this is a hit, and I hope that it won't stop there over time. Customization is also receiving a significant expansion with the introduction of character action skins. Players will be able to personalize a number of the animations that their Warrior of Light uses, including common actions such as teleportation, which was one of the main ones showcased with these varying auras. These cosmetic animation options are designed to let players further express their character's personality without affecting gameplay. They confirmed that rollout will occur across multiple patches, and as far as I'm concerned, this should be an avenue for rewards from content that the developers lean heavily into going forwards. Upgrades, for example healer filler spells and weapon skills like Bard's AoE, where the low-level version Wide Volley was far preferred by many due to its animation. These are examples of some that I expect will be getting very fast, but we could and should see far more too. Boss poses and new animations entirely, and these should be scattered as prizes for doing all kinds of content. It could be really great, and I see it as Evercold's version of the customization we obtained from Adventure Plates. We know this will begin to roll out in 8.0, with more coming in patch 8.1, like so much of what got promised. Character customization is also receiving an expansion in Evercold, with several long-requested options finally making their way to the game's character creator. Lalafell and Viera players will now have the ability to remove their race's default nose shading, whilst Mikote can choose to disable the distinctive facial markings that they have, which, this is terrible, but I must admit I only recently learned is war paint instead of just an actual facial marking. Meanwhile, Aura are gaining greater control over their appearance through new horn customization options, desyncing horn styles from face presets, allowing players more freedom to create unique looks than they ever have had before. All of these changes are very simple and subtle, I feel, maybe excluding the Aura change, which I think is far more consequential, but I hope that with each expansion going forward, they keep on opening up options for players. If we combine these new customization features with the ones we got announced at NA, such as the hair coloration updates and whatever we presumably get at Tokyo Fanfest as well, we should see more variety in Warriors of Light than ever before, and that's a good thing. One of the larger bombshells as far as I'm concerned came when they started talking about changes to the open world, and there they announced World Raids, a new large-scale battlefield content that takes place in the game's overworld. World Raids are designed to encourage players across an entire region to participate in dynamic encounters throughout the open world, though any specific details were very thin because it seems development hasn't really properly started on them yet. These World Raids are to be spearheaded by Mr. Ozma, who is currently working on Beastmaster. The team also announced an auto-movement feature for quests, allowing players to automatically travel towards their current objective, streamlining routine traversal whilst preserving manual control whenever you want. Nice quality of life, but I'm very, very interested to hear more about World Raids, because I think this feature could be a method to take what is good about field operations like Eureka, Boscia, and to a lesser extent Occult Crescent, and put that in the main overworld itself and give players more of a reason to be there. I'm really desperate to hear more. Endgame progression is also set to change somewhat with the introduction of a new 8-player raid difficulty positioned slightly below the challenge of Extreme Trials. This new difficulty aims to bridge the gap between casual content and savage encounters, rewarding players with a new category of seasonal gear, which I'm assuming somewhat replaces Tombstone gear, or works alongside it, that can be upgraded over time to ease the gearing process throughout a patch cycle. Savage gearing, seemingly, won't change, but we're still waiting on further information. Square Enix also confirmed that cross-region player matching and Party Finder will begin rolling out in Japan in October, with support for North America, Europe, and China planned once the system has been thoroughly tested and proven stable. This is the pre-expansion feature I'm most looking forward to, so really I just hope it all goes smoothly and that we get it before Evercold releases worldwide. The Chocobo companion system is set to receive its most significant update yet, beginning with patch 8.1. Leading the overhaul is Dungeoneering, a new feature that allows players to tackle dungeons with a party consisting of 2 adventurers and their 2 Chocobo companions, allowing a new way to complete instanced content without full player parties, and also seemingly allowing Chocobo companions to learn jobs themselves. Square Enix also confirmed a complete revamp of Chocobo breeding alongside a re-examination of Gisselgreens. Rounding out the update, the companion's basic command system will be fully redesigned. The weirdest thing about all of these announcements are like, isn't Chocobo breeding linked to the racing minigame that hasn't received an update since 2.0? Are they expanding functionality and making it more of an overarching Chocobo feature in general? All of these features sound like they could be good, but they are so superfluous, and I find it difficult to get excited until we get some real concrete information. What form does this take? I think this part of the keynote is where I started very noticeably feeling the lack of concrete information, actually. I was really noting there was a lot of, we're gonna add this feature, but we don't have any details. And I really wanted some details to chew on, you know? The next 8-player raid series was officially revealed as Beyond the Lifestream, a collaboration inspired by Final Fantasy VII Remake. The celebration extends beyond the raid itself, as patch 7.56 before the expansion will introduce a new Final Fantasy VII themed area to the Gold Saucer, complete with a new typing-based minigame, which, whilst bizarre, I'm sure should at the very least be a good laugh. Players can also look forward to collaboration-themed rewards, including first of all with the typing minigame, Tifa and Barrett outfits, while Barrett's signature gun arm will be available as a fashion accessory to equip outside of content. At the Q&A, Yoshida confirmed that housing will receive 2 major updates throughout Evercold. He mentioned that they look to World of Warcraft to draw information, and outlined the updates with the following quote. The first of one of those updates involves the UI. I do appreciate that right now, the UI in FF14 is quite technical, and it's not very accessible. So what we want to do is have a major overhaul of that UI so that it is more accessible for casual players so they can easily create elaborate housing layouts. As for the second major update that we have planned, unfortunately I'm not able to provide any details right now, but I think you'll probably be much happier to hear about what it is compared to the UI update. It's currently in the planning process right now on our end. Some measures were also confirmed to make it easier for new players to reach Endgame at the same Q&A, though there weren't really any further details, instead telling us to wait until Tokyo to hear more. As far as I can remember, that was it. So I'm in a bit of a weird spot regarding all these updates, if I'm being totally honest. To make it clear, what we got confirmed, I'm very happy about. There is a lot of potential when we add the quantity and quality of additions from NA and EU together to make Evercold a truly monumental expansion, but I cannot help but feel that we got the short end of the stick, as Square Enix have either sent out far more exciting reveals at NA, or are saving the best till last in Japan. For us, the big thing was clearly the Final Fantasy VII collaboration 8-man raid, which I'm sure is extremely exciting for fans of the original, and I won't lie, I pogged in real life when they played the Sephiroth theme. For me personally though, I don't get too excited about these collaborations. I enjoy them, but they aren't a game changer to my enjoyment in any way, shape or form. I mentioned this a little earlier, but I certainly feel a bit strange about the lack of concrete details we got. They announced Chocobo Dungeoneering and a rework to its systems, and yet we know nothing about what form it will take. We didn't see anything new regarding evolved mode jobs, which, whilst I was expecting to be the case, it's certainly still disappointing, and all of the superfluous promises made in North America, like the weekly progression system or the gearing rework, have stayed superfluous. We didn't get any more details. I was kind of hoping to see in-game footage somewhere for something, even if that was a big expectation and probably unrealistic. I hope and expect that Tokyo will change that in a major way, because we really do need to see more. All in all, I am feeling very positively about Evercold. The developers have been listening and learning over the last couple of years, and it feels that if nothing else is certain, one very important factor is 8.0 will be a far different landscape from the way FF14 is at the moment. I think the reason I'm so thirsty for more information is simply because I'm excited, and that despite that, there's still a fair bit to wait before we get the game in our hands to see how all of these promises come to fruition. Tokyo is going to be really big, I feel, but the wait, that's going to be painful.